Hello and welcome to Ravensdive, rambling about 2015.
Hello, you let me out of the dungeon.
Yay!
It's actually nice to see sunlight after, God, like over a year now.
You can only see sunlight when it comes to video logs.
Yes, and then back into the dungeon with me.
So yeah, from down in Castle Ravensdive's spacious dungeons, we've both been playing a lot of video games this year. And
Yes.
I've seen a lot of best and worst of 2015 lists this year because it was a pretty interesting year. So I'm going to try my best to avoid talking about some of the very, very big popular ones too much.
Well, you say that. I get the feeling there'll be one game in particular we will be talking about, which seems to be all over everyone's top 10 list.
Welcome back to the Undertale podcast from
Yeah.
Ravensdive.
Hello, I was expecting this.
Yeah, let's just replace all our videos of Undertale now. I've seen that a lot of people were really into Fallout 4 this year.
They have been,
The
yes.
Witcher 3. I think one or two people really liked Arkham Knight, but that was very infamous, so...
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's probably best we don't discuss that.
Worked fine for me, I liked it.
I mean, it was functional for me, but I mean, I don't think the game was worth all of the hassle it took to actually run the game properly. So that's just me, though.
Fair enough. But yeah, we don't have any kind of formal system like, these are my top 5 games of the year.
We
Epic
don't.
explosions and music. It's...
Okay, I'll just put this list in the.
You had a list?
No.
Oh, okay. So, on your hypothetical not list, what would be number 12?
Well, you see, I'm not very good at counting, so it only starts at 5.
Okay, then. Fair enough.
But
We are off to a great start.
yes, I know. Yeah.
Minus 1,000 subscribers.
Well, I mean, this is what happens when you keep me in a dungeon without any human contact for a year. It's hard to sort of comprehend what I'm saying half the time.
Yeah, this is what happens also when I get amazingly ill and high off caffeine, so I don't even know what I'm saying anymore.
Yeah, it is the season, I guess.
Okay, I'm going to start off with something fun and controversial. I genuinely think my game of the year is Spooky's House of Jump Scares.
After your playthrough, I cannot really disagree with you. That really, I mean, I've never played it, but from your playthrough on Ravensdive, it does seem like a really fun game.
It is freaking amazing. I mean, it's so cool because it starts off as a really funny parody of YouTube horror bait. This is literally a corridor with identical rooms and scary things jump out at you. But
Yeah.
all the scary things are just utterly ridiculous to mock the very concept of jump scares. And then it kind of loops around into being a genuine YouTube horror game. But the game is also kind of indifferent to you being there and doing it. I mean, Spooky's like, oh, hey, you're still alive. Cool, I guess. Whatever.
I like this, like the little in-joke in the sense that it's actually like 1,000. It's like actually, how many rooms is it again? It's like
It is 1,000.
it is
rooms.
actually 1,000 rooms. Yeah. So I just like the fact that the game doesn't expect you to get through all 1,000 rooms, and just like the snarkiness of Spooky as you actually progress further into the game it's very charming. It's got a lot of personality to it. I'll give it that much.
And then you get the actual ending, and you're like, okay, I wasn't sure what to expect, but yeah, it could only have really ended like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an ending you wouldn't really expect from the start of the game.
It kind of has this weird, sweet balance in that it doesn't take itself too seriously as a horror game. It's not trying overly hard to be, we are the most intimidating thing, this is the new Slender.
Yeah.
You're gonna be so scared, put this on your YouTube channel. But at the same time, it's got some genuinely freaky moments in it, and I like how they just keep mixing up the monsters, because one monster just chasing you over and over again can get really, really boring. But when you've got about 15 different enemies to contend with, and it can switch them up, that is really cool.
I mean, I just like the fact that it doesn't rely on a specific method of scaring the people playing the game as well. I mean, you obviously have the start of the game where you're being jump scared by muffins and just like really chibi skeleton like skulls. And it just
Most adorable little cardboard cutouts.
yeah, and just like with some of the most random noises with it as well. Like half the time the noises aren't actually like that scary. They're just really loud noises, just random noises.
It's utterly brilliant because as the actual game gets scary itself, the really cute cacti from earlier jumping out at you become really intimidating because they're blocking your way.
Yeah.
And they're sudden when you're like, oh god, where's the monster? Is it behind me?
Especially like the fact where like some of the monsters you faced when you were doing your playthrough at least, you were basically walking backwards and you weren't actually able to see the things jump out at you from behind. You just hear the noise and then you wouldn't be able to walk backwards anymore.
It's really cool how it just makes you change tactics as well. But yeah, something that I didn't really learn about until very recently is my strategy, more or less, with the exception of the puppet, where I figured it out, because if it's a case of... In most games, it's a case of either look at it or don't look at it these days.
Yeah,
because that makes things worse.
After the... I forget... I'm really bad with game names. The CP...
SCP.
Yeah, SCP, that's it.
Yeah, with SCP and Amnesia, you kind of get that dichotomy of it's either you've got to stare at the enemy, otherwise it kills you, or you've got to not look at the enemy, otherwise it detects you.
Yes.
Stuff like that. And something that's really cool is my strategy, with the exception of the puppet, was more or less just always run away as quickly as possible. Don't get curious, don't risk anything, don't talk to anything, just keep running. And that more or less led to an almost perfect run of the game.
Yes.
In that there was just no deaths, apart from one off-screen one about 1 o'clock in the morning where I couldn't remember what the interact key was, and something insta-killed me. But yeah, something they've done is they've actually updated the game to kind of counteract my strategy.
Oh, really?
So one of the enemies, I think it's either Specimen 15 or 5, I can't remember which one, but it's kind of a snake thing in an alien lab that crawls along the floor. And I don't think I ever showed it off because it was pretty weak and I was just out running it. And then they made it in the game that this really horrifying thing bursts out of its body when you first discover it.
Oh.
But the amazing thing about it is if you get too far away from it, it adopts a new form that's weaker, but moves insanely quickly and catches up with you.
Oh.
So you need to keep this constant pace from it and always be a bit aware of it, otherwise it'll get you.
I can see why they make that change, and I'm also suspicious in the sense that they've probably seen your playthrough and were like, crap, he's doing really well, we have to do something about this.
It's, something that I always strive to do is not take things too seriously on this channel. There's a lot of people who I've seen get very, very defensive about their Let's Plays.
Yeah.
And, really, this is just an opportunity for me to be goofy and have some fun with some of my friends playing video games I otherwise wouldn't play, or would have a hard time selling to, hey guys, let's sit down and play Total Distortion. I guarantee it will be fun.
Oh, God, please don't do that with me.
No, it's okay.
I'll stay in the dungeon, thanks.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be able to get it working again, really. We've gone on about 3 or 4 operating systems since I last actually got that working, so it's probably unrunnable now. Maybe one day it'll be on goodoldgames.com. Starship Titanic was put up on there recently.
Well, for now, I think it's probably for the best, but,
Yeah. I try not to take things too seriously, but I did feel a bit sad when I got to the end of Spooky's House of Jump Scares and I saw this list of Let's Players they thanked for promoting the game. And I was like, why am I not on there? I did the best playthrough of Spooky's House of Jump Scares.
You should have sent them an angry email asking them why they didn't give you any shout-outs at the end there.
I don't think I motivated anyone to really get the game. I don't think we've ever probably got a copy sold.
You never know. There might have been one person.
Actually, that's not true. The people behind the Zoombeanies remake, which is on Steam right now, sent me an email a couple of years ago saying that they'd like to use my videos on their website to try and show people what the game was like and what they're trying to reproduce.
Interesting.
So I guess I was used for marketing. Yay!
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. I'm not sure if you're ever going to play the remake on the channel, are you?
Probably not. Oh well, we're getting a bit off track.
Yeah.
So, yep, Spooky's House of Jump Scares, 11 out of 10, Game of the Year 2015, completely free as well, apart from the DLC, which I've got to play at some point. So, yeah, what's your Game of the Year?
I've had a pretty difficult time deliberating this, mainly because the games that I think have been really good have been kind of what everyone else is saying, really. I mean, the main game for me would be like Undertale. It's like one of my favorite games this year, if not one of my favorite games that have been released in quite some time now.
I think there's no shame in that. I mean, Undertale is definitely going to be one of the games which is seriously remembered into the future.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's just a game where it's been so different from all of the different sort of things we've had recently. I mean, when you compare Undertale to like Fallout 4 or Metal Gear Solid 5, it's like literally a night and day difference in the games. But for some reason, like Undertale just appeals to me so much more than like Metal Gear Solid 5 and Fallout 4 for some reason.
It's kind of terrifying because Undertale it's more or less made entirely by one guy.
Yeah.
Which is an amazingly impressive feat of itself. I mean, it deserves a lot of props for that. But the other really terrifying thing about it is it's almost genuinely perfect as a game.
I mean, I can't really disagree with that. It's a game where you can tell there has been a lot of sort of passion and a lot of sort of hard work put into that game to get a specific vision through. I feel like sort of like Fallout 4, for instance, it kind of, as the series has progressed, it's sort of lost its way somewhat. But with Undertale, there's literally just like a start and a finish, and everything in between has sort of a progression to get to the end point, or end points, depending on how many times you play it. And I feel that it's a game that will be inspirational for quite some time for sort of... It's going to be a game that's going to be replicated, I feel. Like,
I mean, there was those... Yeah, I can't remember what it was. I think it was the Gamers' Choice Awards or something that happened very recently.
yes.
And Undertale was pretty much snubbed, I believe. There was one which was Most Influential Game or something like that. And I genuinely feel Undertale it's going to be replicated. People are going to try and replicate it.
Yes, yeah.
And that might not necessarily be a bad thing, but I feel we're going to get a lot of bad Undertale clones in the future, and that makes me very sad.
Well, I mean, it's the nature of the beast, I guess. When something becomes popular, you'll have a lot of people trying to jump on the bandwagon, as it were. But
The thing...
yeah, sorry.
The thing that really surprised me when I kickstarted it is that I'd played the demo, and the demo is terrifyingly impressive in that it's actually got a couple of things the full game didn't have. It comes with an instruction manual as a PDF file or something like that, and it actually changes the file depending on what endings you get. So if you kill Toriel in the first area, it comes up with a mocking message at the end saying, "You didn't even try to spare her, did you?"
Interesting.
And if you go the genocide ending, every single page is just replaced with the words, "Let's finish the job," and the distorted picture of Flowey at the end.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I remember ages ago when this was on Kickstarter, you showed the demo of the beginning fight with Flowey to, like, us lot. And at that time, for some reason, it just didn't appeal to me back then. And it's just weird seeing the transition of that, me not being interested in that game, to it being one of my favourite games of this year by, like, a big margin.
The terrifying thing is it's a game that gets better and better as it goes along.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the intro bit with Toriel and just introducing the mechanics, the puzzles and things, that is, I still think that's a very solid area for a video game, but it is by far the weakest part of Undertale.
Yes.
'Cause immediately after that you got Sans and Papyrus. I think maybe one of the weaker areas is when you're being followed by Undyne, but it's a lot of fun, and her boss fight is freaking crazy.
It is.
And when you find out you can run away from her, that just sends so much joy down my spine when I figured it out.
Yeah.
I was like, this is freaking hilarious. You can just run away at this point.
I mean, I've known a few people get frustrated to the point of just actually killing her just because they weren't able to figure out the mechanics of that fight. And I just like the fact that it's not a game that holds your hand in that sense. If you want to be doing the pacifist run, you have to actually find those little details.
I mean, for almost every pacifist solution, they give you a hint as to how you're meant to do it. For Toriel, if you're doing a pacifist run up to that point, one of the frogs mentions you might have to spare someone even if their text isn't yellow at some point. And about 10 minutes later, that is indeed what you have to do to spare Toriel.
Yeah.
When it comes to Papyrus, you can't actually really lose if you're trying to spare him, because he's too nice. And if you lose to him about 3 times, if I remember right, he just lets you past. He feels too bad. He can't do it. He can't capture you. He's just a big, wonderful skeleton made of love.
I wasn't actually aware of that.
No, it's true. As for Undyne, it's a case of she mentions when you're green, you can't run away. Naturally, when you're not green, you can.
Yes.
And Metaton is,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it's a game that has a lot more personality than you would expect it to have. And it's a game that has a lot more depth than you expect it to have as well. Like the part where you go into the laboratory after you do the neutral run.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of things in that sort of laboratory were not exactly what I would be expected, because it does seem like it's going down the horror route at that point. But then there are like certain things, like the part where you go into the bed and that hand sort of slowly appears. That's like a pretty that's quite memorable to me as being, oh, that's actually quite nice. I feel quite bad for that person.
It's quite a cute moment. I mean, there's just so much in the game that catches you off guard, in that, on one hand, everything is very cute, but it becomes amazing how heartwarming it actually becomes.
Yes.
And as for the scary aspects, you really don't expect them when they turn up. The final boss of the neutral run is probably one of the scariest things I saw in a video game this year.
Yeah, it comes out of nowhere as well. I mean, I think it's the only point in the game where they don't use pixel graphics.
Yeah.
Like pixel art at all. And it just comes out of left field. It's amazing. It's like one of my favourite fights.
What absolutely caught me off guard as well is, I mean, I've been playing a lot of horror games this year. I've been playing Soma, and Soma was fairly good, but I feel the monsters take away from the story a bit. It's just kind of a case of, oh no, it's another monster to avoid, oh no, it's seen me, and it's bonking me over the head.
I mean, I think with Soma, it's just a case of they have a really interesting premise for a story, but it's made by the people who made Amnesia, so obviously something has to chase you.
Yeah, but with Flowey, he's not there for most of the game. You go away, you make your choices, and unless you're doing a genocide run, he's just not there. He watches from the shadows.
Yeah.
And people reference him and hint that something's going on, and then he always turns up to turn things incredibly dark, because that's more or less what he needs to do to keep you playing.
Exactly. Yeah, like the part where you're walking with those like light bridge things that you have to like press the flowers for, and there are those flowers that people like talk into, and the reference is that, oh, a flower suggested that I should do this. It's just like, oh, wait, I only know one flower that talks.
It makes it freaking terrifying, and there's just so many little hints as well. I just love that when Papyrus is hinting for you to go to places, he'll start with howdy, which is Flowey's catchphrase, so kind of hinting that he's responsible for it.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of just sheer, like, emotional highs and lows, and especially in terms of just probably one of the strongest villains I've seen in years.
Yes.
Undertale is far and above one of the best games probably ever made at this point.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far just yet, but it's a very strong contender.
I think that things are going to outshine it, but at the moment, it's above and beyond a lot better than a lot of things we've seen in previous years, because I think gaming was very weak last year.
Yes.
And then for something this beloved to suddenly come out, it's really, really caught people off guard, and the internet has just been obsessing over it for a couple of months now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should probably change subject in a second before this actually does turn into the Undertale podcast, but...
Yeah, I knew we had to talk about it.
But
I think I'm going to put a subtitle in saying, to skip Undertale discussion, go to this part in the video.
Yeah, but just as a parting sort of comment on it, it just shows you what you can do as a game designer I mean, like, one person making a game this sort of historic by himself, like music and everything, it shows you what you can do if you actually have a vision and the drive to actually get to that point. It's just it shows up a lot of the AAA developers. It showed up a lot of AAA developers this year, I feel.
It definitely did, so well done, Toby Fox. You deserve every bit of praise you've got, I think, so far. Yay! Ravensdive, prestigious clapping. Oh, yay!
Golf clap, golf clap, golf clap.
Yes. Pip pip, we're British. Okay, so yeah, any other games in particular that you would like to bring up at this point, or shall we move on to one of my ones?
Well, since I brought up Undertale, you feel free to bring up the next game.
It's kind of on my list as well, so I kind of feel like I'm cheating. My non-existent list, yes. I think another game this year which really, really caught me off guard would probably be The Beginner's Guide, because I equal parts love and despise it.
Yes, let's discuss this, because this game has been very polar, I've found, with a lot of people. Either people...
I'd like to say to people, this is a game made by the guy who made the Stanley Parable, and you might have easily missed it, because he did next to no advertising. He released it literally a day after hinting about it on Twitter.
I'd be interested to see his reasoning behind that. I mean, obviously with the success of the Stanley Parable, he could have promoted this game if he wanted to, but I feel like it gives the game a lot more sort of... it's a lot more personal to him, I feel.
It's a very personal game, and it's best to go in not knowing anything about it, so I'm going to put in another subtitle saying, skip to this point to avoid spoilers, because we've got to spoil basically the entire game in order to discuss it in any meaningful way.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of people saying that to discuss the game, you have to discuss yourself, which I find to be quite an interesting thing for a game to do.
Yeah, a couple of people I followed actually have been doing that, and I think one of the notable examples was Jim Sterling wrote a very long, very personal description of his early life experiences, which is pretty heartbreaking to read, whether you like him or hate him.
Yeah.
Which is more or less the only two reactions people have to him, as far as I can tell. But yeah, it's a game that deals with very, very negative emotions that I think everyone has. And, I mean, I suffer from a lot of insecurity. I really, really do overthink things, and I guess I'm also quite desperate for validation a lot of the time.
Well, I mean, YouTube does kind of have that way with people a lot as well. I mean, a lot of people who create YouTube want to be sort of rewarded for their work.
There's a dislike on this video.
What did I do?
No! I do get that occasionally, though. I remember there's one video I did which got 3 dislikes on it, which is very disproportional compared to a lot of the stuff we've done, where it's usually just 1 or 0.
Yeah.
Because we've generally got a lovely audience. But, yeah, for that one, I was just thinking, it's just a video of us walking down a corridor. Nothing really happened in this. What did we do to piss people off so much?
Well, I mean, the internet can be a fickle place, can't it? But... yeah.
So give me constructive feedback on this.
Yeah, back to the Beginner's Guide.
Yes.
I feel like it does give you a really good insight into what it's like to be someone who creates stuff. I mean, I think the game particularly resonates with people a lot more if they are part of a creative field. So, like, people who are sort of making YouTube videos, or people who are making games themselves, specifically. But, I mean, for me, personally, I'm not that sort of person, and I still found the game quite intriguing, and it did sort of make me think about a lot of things that I wouldn't have sort of brought up otherwise.
It kind of puts me in a weird position, because I'm both someone who, I know I'm guilty of some of the things that... To kind of explain an aspect of the game, you're more or less playing through the works of a developer who calls themselves Online Coder, who was a friend of Davies, and Davies uploading a collection of his work to try and motivate him to keep creating things. And then you find out slowly as it goes along that Davy is something of a poisonous friend. And his attempts to try and get Coder to keep making more and more works for him to play so that he can show them off to people, because Davey feels that by showing other people this guy's work and then those people enjoying it, that somehow he is doing a good thing.
Yeah.
It's by doing that he begins to alienate Coda, and then Coda feels more or less violated in terms of this guy is taking my work and showing it to people without my permission.
Yeah.
It's a pretty horrifying twist, and that is ultimately why Coda, at the end of the game, you find out he's more or less gone, and this entire collection is Davey desperately trying to get back into contact with him, and that he's learned almost nothing from this experience.
I mean, it's a pretty interesting way to tell a story in that manner. I mean, I'm thinking of a game that does something like telling you a story in that sort of manner is not something you see nowadays that much anyway. But, I mean, I remember specifically you saying that you weren't exactly a fan of this game all that much before.
It's, I remember someone described Dear Esther as an exploration of unhappiness. I think The Beginner's Guide is a much better game to fit that title, or at least an exploration of insecurity.
Right.
Because it just made me realize a lot of things about myself I really freaking don't like.
Okay.
And I'm not only guilty of doing some of the things Davey does, though not to the point I've pushed people and ever made someone disappear from my life. And I certainly haven't ever taken someone's work and sold it online.
No.
Which is a very strange thing, because Davey does the entire thing in character, so at the end you're kind of like, wow, I feel kind of bad for buying this.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Coda's real. Some people do think he is, in which case Davey has just committed a crime. I personally think Davey's done something very similar in real life, and he's using a bunch of stuff he made himself to illustrate the point.
Well, I mean, I think nowadays in particular, that sort of activity needs to be highlighted a lot more. I mean, like, looking at, on Steam with the amount of stuff that has been made based on copyrighted material that they definitely did not have the rights to use.
Yeah.
It's a lot more poignant now than I think it should have. Like, the fact that it's a problem is baffling.
It turns out to be an extremely long-winded criticism of the Steam Greenlight system or something.
That would be hilarious if that was the case.
It's like, that's the true interpretation of the game. But yeah, the other reason is that, I mean, as someone who creates a lot of stuff, like, both on YouTube but outside of it, I produce other stuff, which I don't bother uploading, stuff I do in real life.
Yeah.
I have reached the point sometimes where I just feel like I'm genuinely not doing things because I enjoy it. I'm doing it to try and make other people happy. And I feel just completely and utterly drained and horrified, and yet people still push me to keep going.
Right.
And I can sympathise with Coda in that regard, so I just ended up feeling just so many negative emotions from it. I was just like, well, great, I've played a game about dicks and miserable people, I feel terrible now, thanks Davey Reedon. And then I went and listened to other people, and they're like, this is Game of the Year because of those reasons that you hate it, Mike. I'm like, what?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting to, like, note that, I mean, I haven't really seen every list of, like, people's favourite games this year, but...
There's too many.
Yeah, but the ones that I have seen, the Beginner's Guide hasn't actually been all that present on them. I'm not entirely sure whether that says something about whether people's opinions on the game have changed, or whether, on reflection, the emotions that they felt on the game sort of hindered their enjoyment of that game compared to everything else that was released this year, or something. But, yeah, I mean, I was listening to a few people discuss their favourite games of the year and favourite stories, and when they bring up Beginner's Guide, they sort of brush it off as a game that is not exactly... what's the right way to put this? It's not framed in a way that a conventional game would be framed, and therefore can hinder its enjoyment somewhat. I'm not sure if that made any sense, but...
Davey needs to put more guns in this game. All of Coda's games were first-person shooters. It's like... Infinity Ward is Coda, and they're not enjoying Call of Duty, but Davey wants to no-scope them.
Let him no-scope, damn you!
Look, you're just not putting enough perks into the game.
Well,
Davey has got a nuke in every single game, Infinity Ward. Why aren't you making more?
I mean, I did enjoy a comment that I read online saying that there's probably a secret ending to the beginner's guide that no one has found yet because of people just following through just the game linearly. And I just like the concept of there possibly being a secret ending that no one's actually seen yet that diverts the game into a sort of full-blown like first-person shooter or whatever.
If there's anyone who would kind of do that, it probably would be Davey Reedon, but I think he's trying to make this point and he wouldn't risk undermining it.
Yes.
There's a couple of points where you can wander off and you can explore, and Davey just literally says, I hate to break it to you, but there's nothing out here. The game is aware of things you might try to do to break it or to go off track. And Davey's just like, yeah, I've tried it too, but there's nothing here. And there never is anything there, so I'm not really sure.
Well, I mean, I would be surprised if that was the case, considering how long the game has been out now. You would have thought someone would have found something, but...
Yeah, people go through the files all the time. I mean, it's on a lot of the games that came out this year, people have just been going through and finding secrets, unused dialogue, unused endings, unused characters.
Yeah.
So you always get a better idea of what could have been in a game, really, that makes this year kind of weird.
Yes, very much so. I think a lot of people have been spoilt on stuff just because of all the data mining that's happened.
Yes. I mean, so much about Undertale comes down to data mining. No, let's not go back to that.
Yeah, please. We'll lose everyone else then.
Yes. Oh, we've already lost everyone. I just wanted to hang out with you for an evening.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I'm completely okay with this.
Awesome. We'll upload this ceremoniously. Maybe we can get a couple of views. Increase our YouTube grade statistics, brother!
Like, so that I can actually leave the dungeon for good, please.
But yeah, the Beginner's Guide, it's very, very unique, and I think it's very brave of Davey to make a game that casts himself as the villain and exposes his most negative qualities. And I think there's a lot of truth in it, even if I don't believe Coda is genuinely a real person, though it might represent someone in Davey's life.
Yeah.
But he says he's not willing to really talk about it or do interviews regarding it for at least a couple of years, so fair play to him for taking the emotional leap of faith and actually going forward and putting something that makes him look like a dick on the internet. Takes a lot of bravery.
It does. I think it is a game that does deserve the recognition it's gotten, so... But yeah.
Fair play, Davey. Clap, clap, clap,
golf
clap,
clap, golf clap.
Yes.
The inaugural golf clap.
Yes.
Okay.
Accept your crown of... Oh no, we don't have anything really associated. We don't do memes. We need to work on this.
That's why I'm here. But yeah.
Yay.
Okay, so can I go on to one of the games that I found fairly interesting this year?
Yeah, go for it.
This is a game that I think you will sort of find interesting because it's an FMV game.
Oh.
Can you guess what game I'm talking about?
Actually, no.
Have you heard of a game called Contradiction?
No.
Really?
This sounds really interesting. I love FMV games.
Okay, so background. Game was on Kickstarter. At least I believe it was on Kickstarter anyway. And they got to their goal, released a game, Contradiction. It's a game about an investigator comes to I believe it's a British town, to investigate the death of a young girl who goes to college in the nearby area.
Is this Deadly Premonition?
It does take inspiration from Deadly Premonition.
Okay.
But yeah, it's basically an up-to-date FMV game where you go around to people's houses, you interview them, you like go through different items that you have in your inventory to sort of bring up topics of conversation. And as you bring up more and more things, you'll start to notice that when people say stuff, there might be a contradiction. Yeah. So the whole point of the game is you're trying to look around this town, this sort of sleepy British town, and you're trying to sort of piece together what's actually happening here. And you meet some fairly interesting characters, to say the least. Like, there is literally a person who is trying to ham up the entire game all by himself, and it's absolutely amazing.
That sounds really fun. I just love it when there's an actor who either they're told to just let loose or they know they're in a really bad production and they're like, nothing I do matters. I'm getting paid. I'm going to have as much fun as possible with this.
Well, I mean, the main character in this game is called Jenkins, and he is literally the most emotive person I have seen in a long time. I think it's probably deliberate, but it is. Oh, his acting is brilliant. It's there are parts in the game where he's sort of giving evidence to people, and he does the thing where he does all of the head movements to when he's saying things, and he's like putting his entire body into emoting how serious he is about like this random piece of like sellotape or this like ID he found like lying around on the floor. It's great. Oh,
that sounds freaking amazing. It sounds like Ripper, but more self-aware in a number of ways.
Oh, it is completely self-aware. It's... Oh, gosh. I don't really want to spoil this, just because I think this is a game that you and Sam would absolutely love.
No, please don't. We might not do it on the channel, but I'm definitely going to go away and play this now.
It's a game I came across because... watching someone on YouTube do a Let's Play of it, and it looked amazing. I played it, it was amazing. I was a little disappointed with the ending, but there is meant to be a sequel, so I'm okay with that.
That is good. At least they're going to continue it.
Yes. So, yes.
I'm really excited now. That's something I'm looking forward to playing.
I'm surprised you hadn't heard of it. I would have thought this would have been right up your alley.
I'm always a bit apprehensive about FMV games nowadays because I'm very charmed by FMV games of the 90s because people were thinking, this is the cutting edge of technology, we can put real actors on there, video game will be taken seriously, it's like movies, but you can affect the choices, and it always came out looking and feeling really camp and awful. It was always hilariously bad.
But I feel like with Contradiction, it knows that FMV games can be campy, and it rolls with it. And it rolls with it so well.
I am glad it embraces its strengths in that way.
Like, literally, Jenkins, you'll absolutely love him. I think Sam will probably find himself doing his voice quite a lot if he ends up playing this game.
It sounds really fun. I have got to get on that. Was it on Steam? I should have got it in the winter sale if it was.
I believe it is on Steam, yes.
Okay, I'm definitely going to go and get that now. That seems really cool. So, congratulations, creators of Contradiction. Yes,
very well done.
You will never listen to this, neither will anyone else.
Biffing.
But, yep, pip, you get awards, sticky wicket.
Okay, so, on to you now. Do you have another game you want to talk about?
I feel so bad looking at the audio wavelengths because I think for the ones I've been talking about, I've been going on for about 10 minutes.
Oh.
And then for your ones, about 5 minutes. Okay, I'll try and go for something quite brief, which is difficult considering my choice of game here, actually. I know a lot of people hate it, but I really enjoyed Life is Strange this year.
Okay. No, yeah, all I've been hearing about it is praise, honestly. I mean, a lot of people have been saying it's basically what Telltale should be doing, basically.
I wanted to say that up until Tales from the Borderlands happened this year, which is what Telltale is now doing, which it should be doing.
Yes.
It's got a couple of really cool things in it, in that because there's a time travel mechanic, you know what kind of choices you're going to end up making. It's not a case of, I said this thing, and then character X reacted badly, I had no way of knowing this, so, oh well, I've done all I can do now, unless I go and replay the entire game to get that choice again.
Yeah.
But, yeah, for Life is Strange, it's great, because the first episode is just really camp and funny. It's just, you got these teens going, hella, popcorn, yeah, we're hipster photographers. I played it with Adam, and Adam just clicked on every single thing in the first room. And there's some really hipstery things she says about either famous photographers or about the equipment.
Right.
It's really embarrassing and awkward, and I skipped all of it the first time I played. I didn't realise how cringy that room is.
Yeah.
But it's very cringy. It's a very cringy first episode, but then in episode 2, it suddenly gets absolutely amazing. in terms of some of the moral choices that get made, and it goes some really, really dark places.
Okay.
The game actually warns you that you could more or less end up traumatized by it, which is pretty appropriate because, yeah, it's pretty traumatizing. Some of it can hit very, very close to home.
Right.
Especially in episodes 2 and 4, so yeah, be warned about those ones. The only reason I don't feel it's really perfect, because I thought it was almost perfect in its own way up until episode 5, is that the ending is...
Yeah, no, I have heard that. Well, I mean, I basically had this entire game spoiled for me on accident, but I know what happens at the end, and that decision does not seem like something you want to put in the hands of the player.
It gives you more or less... You've got everyone telling you... In fact, there's an extremely extended sequence saying, this is the right thing to do. Do the right thing. It's going to suck, but this is how you get the good ending. And when that came up, I just felt really, really angry.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm making this choice. I'm going to be stubborn. I've got a much higher body count now than Sam in the other room, who's doing the good choices. In fact, I think the maximum number of people that can die in the game did in my playthrough.
Right.
I made literally the worst decisions you can make for so much of it. And at the time, they all seemed right, but it played out very badly, and I've really got no one to blame but myself for it.
Well, I mean,
but
it does...
I felt proud. I defied the game's creators. I'd picked the bad ending deliberately, and I have not ever got the good ending, so screw that.
Well, I mean, I think it does show that more people other than Telltale can do a game in that sort of format well. It does show that as well. I think that sort of genre of game, especially in that format, is quite rare to see. And I'm interested to see what they are going to do with the Life is Strange franchise now.
Yeah. I mean, as long as they go with, like... I think they should use different superpowers, because the way the plot of Life is Strange 1 has gone, time travel isn't really feasible anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's always going to come down to the same moral decision at the end, now that they've kind of written that into the universe.
Yeah.
So they've got no choice but to do that, but I think they could probably come up with some other things which would have serious consequences, so I look forward to whatever they come up with next.
Well, I mean, I know that the next game they're making isn't going to be Life is Strange, is it? It's like a completely different game now, so...
No, there's, I think they're making some kind of vampire game, though I might be thinking of a different studio.
Right.
There was some choice-based game where you roleplay, I think, as a Victorian vampire, and there's various things you can do, but I have no idea who's doing that. But I do know they are making a Life is Strange 2, so...
Okay.
That probably won't be out next year by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, probably not.
But I look forward to it in 2017, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, Life is Strange, well done.
Yay, clap, clap. Hella British ticket.
Right, okay, so I'm just going to throw a curveball in here now.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about Blaze Blue Chrono Phantasma Extended.
Those are words.
Yeah, those are definitely words that can make a sentence sometimes. But yeah, it's basically, for those who don't know, it's a fighting game made by Arc System Works, who have made Guilty Gear and the Persona 4 arena fighting game.
I haven't played the arena game, actually. I hear it's got actually a big story to it. Is it worth playing?
I would say Arena is worth playing for the story. I would say that Ultimax, the sequel, I take it or leave it. But the story mode in Persona 4 Arena is really good. But anyway, back onto Chrono Phantasma.
I needed to know that. It's very important for my next couple of years.
Okay.
Because Persona takes forever.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. So with Chrono Phantasma Extended, it's basically the sort of updated version of the Chrono Phantasma game they released last year, introducing more characters like Celica, and it's for me, I love 2D fighting games, so having Blaze Blue sort of an annual installment of Blaze Blue is really good for me. But I will say that it's kind of getting to the point now where I love Blaze Blue, but I really would like them to stop releasing a new game every year now.
That's probably how I feel about Assassin's Creed. I'm trying to keep off mainstream things too much because I got very depressed recently just going through, because I love the end of every year, going through the end of the year list and seeing what other people were into. Because you get just people talking about things they love, and there's so much positivity which you don't normally get on the internet when it comes to talking about video games.
Yeah.
But, it's most of the time this year is Witcher 3, Fallout 4, Witcher 3, Fallout 4, Rocket League, Undertale.
Yeah, I mean, I think this year there have been a lot of good games, but there have also... It's kind of like that... It's been a year where everyone has liked the same games, so there is no variety. Which is why I bring up BlazBlue Conan Phantasma Extended.
Yeah, I think it's good that... I was not expecting that,
yes.
So fair play to you. You're bringing up a bunch of things I'm interested in that I've not actually heard of, so... I mean, I doubt people have got to this point in the video, but I feel utterly thrilled that I'm going to find out about these things.
Yes.
So, is BlazBlue only available on Vita, or
it is available on, at the moment, Vita, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 3.
Okay, so it's not completely inaccessible.
No. They have been trying to bring BlazBlue onto Steam, but they're doing it very slowly. They have only just started bringing on Continuum Shift this year, which was a game that was released like 4 years ago? I'd say 4 years ago? I can't remember.
I hope that all these games do one day end up on Steam, because a lot of publishers sign deals to get exclusive rights for consoles.
Yes.
But not necessarily for PC, so you kind of end up with a situation with D4. I think D4 got released on PC this year.
It did, yes, yeah.
Where it was going to be dead in the water on Xbox One, but it came out on PC, and D4 was a very fun game I played this year.
Which is a real shame as well if it did die like that, because it's meant to be episodic. So if it dies, it just ends there, and it's just like you don't get to see what happens.
Yeah, there's I think there's 2 episodes and a prologue in season 1, and it's really fun. I love D4 because it comes from the guy who did Deadly Premonition.
Yes.
But at the same time, it ends on a very, very horrible cliffhanger, and if it just stops there, I am going to feel extremely, extremely annoyed with those guys.
Yeah. Well, it's
Swery, I think. Yeah. With frickin' Microsoft.
No, I mean, the fact that they did release it on PC does show that there is some life in the game still, so hopefully the PC sales will sort of push it over to get the next installment through.
That's good.
But yeah, I didn't really want to say much about BlazBlue, because I know you don't really play BlazBlue, so they would...
I don't play a lot of fighting games, but I would like to get into some of the Japanese ones, because my Vita has actually been probably the console I've spent the most time on this year.
Yes.
Because I downloaded Danganronpa 2, I downloaded Persona 3, Persona 4, and PS1, PS2 games. I've just been kind of burning through them at this point, and it's been pretty fun, really. It's a great archiving system, and a game for playing obscure Japanese games.
Saying that, though, there is one game which I'm surprised you haven't mentioned yet that is on Vita. Danganronpa Another Episode?
Okay, I've got weird feelings about that.
Okay, do tell.
I love the story of it. I think the gameplay is kind of a bit clunky and it's not as fun.
Right.
Also, I am a big fan of... For those of you who don't know, Danganronpa is a murder mystery series of video games. And the idea is more or less, usually you have about 15 kids, and they are trapped in either a school or somewhere else, and they are told by a hilarious robot teddy bear that they have to kill another student and not get caught to graduate.
As robot teddy bears tend to do.
So it's often described as Phoenix Wright meets Battle Royale?
Yeah. No, yeah, that is actually a pretty accurate description.
Just as 999 is Professor Layton meets Saw. But it's...
Sorry.
But yeah, they're really, really weird, bizarre, quite funny games. The internet's was very in love with them a couple of years ago, and if you've heard of it, you've probably had it spoiled for you already. But if you have a way to play them, I think they might be out on tablets at this point as well, so I'd recommend going away and playing them, or reading the Let's Play on LP Archive of 1.
I have heard rumours that they are trying to bring Danganronpa onto Steam. I'm not
I would approve of that. I think it would be good.
I think it would do the game... it would give the game a lot more exposure that it deserves, because it is a really good game series.
It is probably one of the biggest selling points of the Vita. I think a lot of people bought Vitas just to play Danganronpa 2.
Yes.
I bought mine to play Virtue's Last Reward, but then when I found out about Danganronpa, I was thrilled that I owned a Vita, so it's very, very useful.
I mean, I mainly bought my Vita for Danganronpa and Persona 4 Golden, so, that's...
Good choices.
Yes.
Good choices. But yeah, going back to another episode, it's a third-person shooter with some puzzle aspects, and it's quite long, though the Danganronpa games have always actually been quite long, because they're very story-based.
Yes.
But I found a lot of the new characters introduced weren't as memorable or likeable. Really, the big highlight of Danganronpa another episode is the villains.
Yeah.
And the villains are very memorable, they're very interesting, and the story is probably the darkest one actually in the Danganronpa series, which is kind of an impressive feat for a series which is about kids killing each other.
I know, yeah, you can't imagine it getting too much darker than that, but fair play, they found a way.
They kind of succeeded, but it also, some bits of it just don't really sit well with me, and by the end of it I felt just extremely confused and a bit drained.
That's fair.
The main villain is absolutely terrifying in Danganronpa another episode when you figure out what's going on.
Yes.
And the game ends on a very, very sadistic choice. So I am very happy that that game was made, but I'd probably recommend watching a story playthrough rather than playing it for yourself. It's something that I want to recommend to people so they can keep up to date with the Danganronpa story, but not so much because of the gameplay.
Well, I mean, I have not played it yet. I have bought it during the January sales, so I do plan on playing it. But all I know is that one of the characters is voiced by someone who does the voice acting of Haruhi in the Japanese dub of that show. So I'm interested to see how that turns out.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything for you now that I know that fact, but I'd like to say this. There's one mini-game in that game. You'll know it when you find it.
Okay.
And it will make you feel extremely uncomfortable.
Right, okay. I look forward to this.
No, you don't. It's the most messed up freaking thing, and I am very disappointed in you, Danganronpa. I've talked to Adam, and he says, to be fair, this is Danganronpa. This is a very Danganronpa thing to do.
Yes.
But yeah, unfortunately not one of my games of the year.
Okay, that's fair enough. I was just curious, because I don't think we've really discussed this, so it's nice to hear your opinions on this.
It's something I would recommend to people, but at the same time, I feel it's not as strong as the previous entries. It's got weaknesses, and I think people should know that. It's got its own merits, and I'm looking forward to Danganronpa 3 massively.
Yes, as am I.
I think you play as Robot Naigi in that for some reason.
I've heard varying things about that, but it'll be interesting to see how that story turns out, especially after the second game.
Oh dear. Anyway, enough of the future, back into the past.
Yes.
So, one more game I'd like to bring up for my hypocrisy quota.
Okay.
I'd like to bring up Assassin's Creed Rogue. Now, I'm getting this onto the list through a massive technicality.
That was a game that was technically released last year.
But I've got the PC version, which came out this year.
Okay.
So, technicality.
Okay, continue.
It's probably my favourite Assassin's Creed game. I think that it and Black Flag are very, very strong together, because they're kind of brother and sister games. But the reason I like it is it's an Assassin's Creed game where they put in new characters, and they put in a story. And the story is kind of messed up, but it's got its really good moments, and I love some of the characters. You play as a Templar, for those of you who don't know, and the way you become a Templar and the reasons you become a Templar, it's all very, very well done. And I just really enjoyed it. It was a game that I just really enjoyed playing this year, and it was weird because I got the PC port of it, but at the same time, Ubisoft did a good job for once. I don't know how they did it, but they made it work.
Well, I mean, you would have thought after Unity, if they screwed up again, they would literally be the end of them.
I bought Unity and Rogue, and I loved Rogue and despised Unity.
It's just ironic how, like, Rogue was basically a sort of throwaway game that they made, and it turned out to be a lot more popular and a lot more sort of coveted than Unity that year.
I think along kind of the core fan base of Assassin's Creed that played both, Rogue is the one which people really enjoyed the story of, and they haven't really... It's just literally the same combat and engine from 4, so... It doesn't really make any vast improvements, apart from it gets rid of fire barrels from your ships and replaces it with a flaming trail of oil you put in the ocean, which is pretty fun.
Okay.
But the really cool thing about it is that it's a game that trusts you. Assassin's Creed does not trust you, ever. It spends a long time, usually, walking you through, this is how you climb, this is how you do a leap of faith, this is how you kill someone, this is how you sail your ship. This is how you talk to characters. This is how you carry a box. It takes a long time before you actually do anything really fun in a lot of Assassin's Creed games.
Do they explain things in that HAL voice as well?
I probably.
I'm sorry, I can't let you do that leap of faith.
If the Animus had a voice, it would be that. And Unity is kind of painful because it starts off with you playing the Templar's home video game console. And then cuts to the assassin saying, hey, let's show you this kid's traumatic childhood memories. Now let's cut to him being a jerk as a teenager.
Yay.
And it takes forever. The first hour and a half, nothing really happens. In the first 5 minutes of Rogue, you jump off a branch onto your assassin buddy. You beat up some mental guy you're disagreeing with, who's yelling at you in an angry French accent. You assassinate a bunch of British guards. You steal their ship. And then you blow up a bunch of other ships. It trusts you.
It does sound like a lot more of an appealing opening. It's definitely an opening that you would actually like to continue going through, as opposed to the other one.
Yes. The other thing is it just looks gorgeous. I found Unity was really ugly with its... I mean, they put a lot of detail into the French streets and Notre Dame Cathedral and things. But a lot of aspects of the game just looked really ugly, like the hair. They put a lot of effort into those new hair mechanics, and it just looked like someone had attached wafer-thin chocolate to their heads or something.
Wafer-thin.
Whilst in Rogue, okay, it's a little bit more cartoonish, but things looked realistic. I liked the facial expressions, and it had some really memorable characters in it compared to Unity, where I don't really remember anyone other than the guy calling me Piss Pot all the time.
I mean, to be honest, I don't play Assassin's Creed. But I
can't blame you.
Yeah, I'd say that out of all of the games that they've released, apart from 4, which I do find quite interesting, Rogue is probably the only other Assassin's Creed game I would want to play. Like, even more than Syndicate, which is sort of based in Britain.
Pip pip.
Pip pip. You would have thought that would have appealed to me more, but nope. Being a Templar.
Nope. No, Syndicate was a fairly good entry this year, compared to last year anyway. They hadn't exactly set the bar high with Unity and Watch Dogs and Thingamajig's.
Yeah.
But no, Syndicate, I think they're getting back on track, and there's rumours at the moment that they're going to take time out to make one in 2017 rather than 2016, so maybe the series will get back on track.
We can only hope.
They're thinking of putting it in Egypt as well, which would be kind of cool, honestly.
That would be interesting.
Climb a pyramid. I don't know how you'd leap of faith off it, but you'll figure it out.
Just leap of faith into the sand.
Yeah, that's convenient.
Thank God someone put all of this sand here.
Yay! Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, any other games in particular you'd like to bring up?
There's one game I'd like to mention. I mean, it's not a game...
Yeah, should we do a mention section then?
Yes.
Just gotta do honourable mentions.
Okay, so I'll just mention Pillars of Eternity.
Yay!
I do find that game enjoyable. However, the combat system doesn't gel with me all too well. But, I mean, I love the lore of that game, and I love the fact that you can play as a character whose head is literally on fire. That appeals to me.
I love how that's in character creation. It's like, you can't wear a helmet, but your head's on fire, so who cares?
Yes, why would you want to wear a helmet?
Your head's on fire. You're automatically winning at life.
Yes, very much so. Especially when you give him a smooth accent, so he's trying to, like, seduce the ladies with a flaming head.
It just builds up a very interesting world so quickly in terms of the things you encounter. I don't really want to spoil any of it.
Yes.
It's meant to harken back to isometric, party-based role-playing games. It's very reminiscent of a D&D game. Sam plays quite a bit of Pillars of Eternity.
It's very reminiscent of Baldur's Gate, which makes sense, considering, but...
It's kind of, I think, in many ways meant to be a spiritual successor to those kinds of games.
Yes.
And fair play to Obsidian. I mean, it's nice to see them make something on their own for once, because they've been taking other people's worlds and then writing really interesting stories in them. Like with Fallout New Vegas, which honestly is my favourite Fallout game. Yeah, take that, 4.
Well, I mean, I think it will be very interesting to see how they follow up Pillars of Eternity, because they put a lot of work into that game. And
they did, it's huge.
Yeah, it's a massive game. It'll take a big game to sort of follow that up with, I guess. So
I look forward to what they make next, because Obsidian are just such great storytellers also.
They really are. Do you have a mention you'd like to bring up?
As an honourable mention, I think that Assassin's Creed Rogue is probably my honourable mention.
Okay.
But as kind of as another one, I think I'd like to go with Until Dawn, because I didn't feel the urge to play it twice after my first ending.
Okay.
But I sat down with Sam and Amy and we played through it, and it was really fun. There's like goofy there's goofy quick-time event snowball fights between two of the characters, which is really, really stupid and charming.
Okay. Well,
the game it just understands horror movies so well. It doesn't take itself too seriously. There's some really good plot twists in there, and it's got some really dark and some really funny moments. And whenever anyone dies, you kind of feel like, yeah, they kind of probably either had it coming, or this feels like a natural conclusion to their story.
Yes.
It's the deaths kind of work. So, if someone dies, I mean, it's also a case of you can prevent deaths. I mean, you watch a horror movie, it's like, why is everyone an idiot? Why are they splitting up? But you can prevent their deaths if you play the game properly. I did not play the game properly. I ended up with 3 survivors.
That's enough.
Yeah. One was due to me making a hasty choice at the ending, and one was due to Amy and Sam yelling at me to do a different thing to the thing I was doing. Both of us were right, but because I couldn't pick either in time, because I was torn between them, someone just died.
Okay.
And it was my favourite character, so...
Okay.
Very, very bitter about that.
I've heard a lot of good things about it. I haven't played it, but I know a lot of people do love that game, so...
If you get bored, come over and play it. I think you'd enjoy it.
I might take you up on that.
Excellent.
There is an honourable mention I do want to bring up, which I wish I'd brought up earlier, but have you heard of Jotun?
Yes, actually. I saw that on Steam during the winter sale. I feel like I've said summer sale at some point and somewhere in this video. If I have, then I am sorry. There's probably a comment already correcting me.
Well, it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. It's Adam.
But yeah, I mean, Jotun, I love that game. It's, for those who don't know, you play as a Viking called Thora, named after Thor, god of thunder.
Awesome.
And basically, she dies via drowning.
Oh.
And it is a very unceremonious way to die as a Viking. So
it's pretty anticlimactic. I mean, you're dying battle.
Yes. So to make up for that, she now walks around in sort of purgatory, or the Norse equivalent, and she now must fight the gods in order to have access to Valhalla.
There are worse fates to meet after you die?
Yeah.
I'd be cool with that.
It's such a beautiful game. Like, everything is hand drawn.
I love games that do that.
Like, the sense of scale in that game is amazing as well. Like, the bosses you have to fight are literally godlike. The size comparison between you and the gods are just great. And it's a very simplistic combat system, but because of the nature of the game, I feel like that goes in its favor, because you need to master the control scheme in order to beat the gods, and especially if you're going for the achievements where you take no damage, or you don't use the power of the gods in order to beat them.
We gotta get those Steam trading cards, Clarkey.
I know.
We've got to get them.
I know.
Sell them for 5 pence.
I sold one for 10 pence once. It was amazing.
Whoa.
I could have bought a Freddo bar like 5 years ago with that. But
once they start selling food on Steam, then you'll be in luck, my friend.
Yes. But yes, Jotun is it's such a good game. I love it.
I might try that out. It looks pretty interesting. There's a lot of really cool games that kind of go onto the radar, because this was, in general, I think this was a good year for gaming.
Yes.
I think next year, well, we're in it right now, actually. We're calling this a bit later than I expected.
Yeah, sorry.
But no, it's okay. We both had stuff to do. But with 2016, there's a bunch of stuff coming out I'm looking forward to. There's Mirror's Edge 2, there's Persona 5.
Yes.
There's many things I've forgotten. As like a list of about 6 or 7 games I'm looking forward to this year. So hopefully it'll be good and we can do enough more of these next year where we don't just go, ugh, it was awful.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's really good to see that sort of at least some of the AAA developers are actually stepping up their game. Like, Syndicate isn't actual total garbage now.
I think it's because of the Steam refund system in terms that they can't get away with buggy messes anymore.
Yes.
And also, sales were down after Unity because people felt kind of betrayed, so I think a lot of companies are taking more time to work on their games. And some of the most notable and most successful games of this year were things that came completely out of nowhere. I mean, Fallout 4 and The Witcher 3 were always going to be very big and successful,
yes.
But a lot of the things we've mentioned, such as, for example, Rocket League, though not something we personally play,
yes.
A lot of games which are a lot smaller just generally topped a lot of people's lists, especially Undertale.
Yes.
Let's talk about Undertale.
So, how long can we make this podcast? We've already been going an hour, nearly.
20,000 hours.
But yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's been a game that has it's been a year where a lot of very unique ideas have sort of come to light, and I think it's sort of widen people's perspective on games, like Undertale, obviously, like Contradiction for me, that sort of was like, wow, FMV game which is actually really compelling. That's nice.
I got to agree. They tried a lot more things this year. I mean, another FMV game, which I guess gets an honourable mention, would be Her Story,
yes.
which that was kind of an interesting one in terms of just putting things into a database and then looking for little details to find more things. It's a really bizarre but really cool gameplay system, and the actress is actually really freaking good in it. And then when you figure out what's going on, you're like, wow, that's actually kind of clever and kind of hilarious.
No, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the next year follows up from all of the successes this year. Just because it's hard to imagine that there'll be a lot more sort of unique ideas coming to the table after such a diverse year previous. But I look forward to seeing how things pan out.
Yeah, me too. So, yeah, don't mess it up, 2016.
I'm looking at you. Yes, you. Stop it.
Got about 360 days to not mess this up.
Oh, before we go, I do want to mention one game. I'm just going to say its name. Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex First Assault Online. I like it. But yeah, that's all of my honourable mentions, I believe.
Fair enough. I don't think I've got any more, really. I've been just meaning to get into a lot of games which people really like Bloodborne and The Witcher 3.
Yes.
I've bought them and I've yet to play them, so I'm going to be sitting down doing that in the next couple of weeks. And I'll be like, damn it, these were games that they got.
We have to make a redacted podcast saying, like...
It's like...
Sorry.
Delete the video after only Adam has listened to it, record it again.
And then just talk about how amazing The Witcher 3 and Bloodborne were. Yes.
And then we end up going off track and talking about Undertale for 2 hours.
Yes. Speaking of which, Undertale.
Undertale, right? Oh yeah. Also, Game of the Year: Five Nights at Freddy's 4.
Oh God.
3 and 2.
Whatever it's on right now.
There's so many.
There's so many games.
Well, anyway, thank you for joining me on this, and see you next time we do a video log, I guess.
Yes, thank you for letting me out of the dungeon for a bit. It's nice to see sunlight.
Don't get used to it.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye now.